Hey everyone, and welcome back to podcast number 2. Talking horses with Marie, or talking horses at ABRA. So today I want to talk to you about horses that seem difficult and how to settle them into a new property. So you have a horse, it's just gotten off the truck or off the float, it's reared, it's barked, it's dragged you around the property. Often what I do initially is pop them in my arena, and in my indoor arena where they can't really destroy anything. They can run around if they need to, they can have a roll, and they can start to get used to me as the leader of my property. So then I'll give them a hard feed or some hay also in the arena so that they get used to my presence, maybe give them a little groom. Once they've finished that, I'll then try to get them to walk calmly with me on a lead rope and doing some stops and starts. So I just want to check that they will, and this is a trained horse that's come to the property. Now you have to expect when you have a new horse on a property that there's going to be some sort of anxiety that happens. They don't know where they are. They don't know that they're going to stay with you. They don't know if they're going back to where they came from. So it's really important that you settle them in the right way. So I always put new horses in a quarantine paddock, which is away from all of my school horses and away from all of the other horses. Now, they have other animals on the other side, so they have cows on the other side, but they cannot touch noses with other horses until such point that I know that they don't have a communicable disease. Now, this is good biosecurity for farms because you don't want to just throw them in a paddock with other animals, with other horses, where they can touch noses and then potentially pass on a flu or pass on worms. So they get wormed as soon as they get here, and then I leave them for a couple of weeks. Now, I say leave them. I interact with the horses every single day, 2 to 3 times a day. And that might be bringing them out of the paddock, bringing them into the stables to feed them. It may be, and then I will wash down the stable once they've been in it. Or it may be bringing them into the arena, again, wash down the arena, because you don't know and you don't want to have your whole herd sick from having a new horse coming into the property. So it all depends on how long they get to stay in the paddock without any real in-hand work or without too much work happening on how they settle. I want them to know that I come and feed them, I love them, and then they will go back to their safe space, which is the paddock that I've set up. When I take a horse in a paddock for the first time, I don't just close the gate and let them go. I walk the perimeter of the paddock so that they know where all of the fences are, they know where the water is, and they know where they get fed. Now, often in all of my paddocks, I will feed the horses on one side of the paddock and then the water will be on the other side to promote walking, to promote moving around in the paddock. I don't want horses who just stand at gates and don't do anything. So I want to encourage them to actually move around the paddock. So at what point do you then start working them? It just depends on their nature. It depends on how they're settling, but I'll usually give it a week or 2 before I actually bring them into work. Having said that, when I'm training horses and they're in the quarantine paddock, I do leave them for a day or 2 and then I start bringing them in and working them. So those horses do go home after, and there is a timeline on the amount of time that I have to train the horse. But you have to remember, when you're taking your horse to a trainer, it takes the time it takes. You may have set 6 weeks up for them to learn something, but they may not get it in that 6 weeks. And you cannot always blame the trainer for that or blame your horse. It might be circumstantial. The horse might have a higher level of anxiety than expected when going to a new place. You can't explain to the horse, hey, you're going home in 6 weeks, so we need to get a wriggle on and get you trained. You need to work on the horse's time. And I think that's a lot of what's missing in the horse industry, is that we're in a really consumer conscious society and we want things yesterday. And horses don't work like that. They really don't work to a time frame. They don't know what our intentions are. They don't know that we're meant to teach them Spanish walk today, or that today we're going to work on your canter. And it's really important that we look at how we're training and why we're training the horses, and is it going to enhance them or is it going to hurt them? So in all that I do here, as you'll be aware as this podcast continues, is that horse welfare is absolutely number one on my list. I really put the horse's needs above everything else. So there will always be times where a horse is injured, or something, a vibe has gone through the paddocks and the horses are a little bit heightened, and we'll work with that. It doesn't mean that we won't work them, but we'll work with what they have and what they display at the time. We work with the horse that we've got, not the horse that we expect that we've got. So we're 2 weeks in, we're a little bit further down the track. Then what happens? I always start with work in hand with horses. So I start with getting them to understand moving their shoulders, moving their hindquarters, stopping, going. Do they respond to voice cues? And I really find out who that horse is, be it at liberty, on a lead rope, with a bridle on. I go through all of those steps. Then we look at how they respond when a saddle blanket comes out. I check the fit of the bridle, the fit of the saddle, and check that the horse is in no pain. Then we look at, if we find pain, then we look at, well, what is the source of the pain? I don't just give them pain relief and expect it all to go away. We look at their feet, because their feet are so incredibly important in the structure and function of the horse. And the feet can tell you an entire story for 12 months of what has gone on if there's been any stressful events, because there are rings that will come on the front capsule of the hoof. Have they had laminitis? Are they shod? Are they barefoot? All of these things play a factor in how I will work the horse and how much I will work the horse. So once we've started in hand and they're going along, they've not had any big reaction to the saddle blanket, the saddle fits, then we'll look at doing work in hand with the saddle on, including lunging, and then we'll have somebody lay over their back, and then we will mount, and then we will ride, making sure that they understand voice cues, they understand rein aids, they understand what a whip is, and that it's an extension of my arm, and that it will bring their mind to the particular group of muscles that I'm wanting them to think about, that they can move towards, that they can move away from the whip. So there's a lot in, getting a new horse or training a horse that they need to go through before we then work on anything else that people may want the horse to learn. And by doing this, the horse starts to trust the trainer a lot more when we're taking it on their time. When we're doing small bits, when we're having breaks every 2 to 3 minutes for the horse to just stand and relax. So the horse understands that being relaxed is where we want them. We want them calm but responsive. So we don't need to be heightened in energy all of the time, but when we do get heightened in energy, that they respond to that, because we absolutely want them to respond to our energy. We want them to respond to the cues that we're giving them. And then we hop into the saddle, and if there are times where the horse is not understanding what we're asking, or is displaying behaviors that are undesirable, like bucking, biting, kicking, stopping and not going forward, then we need to look at the root cause of that and not just work them through it, but we need to find the root cause. So there's a lot of problem solving that goes on behind the scenes that you won't always see trainers doing. But what I want to do is open up my world to you guys so you can see what I do on a daily basis with the horses, so that you understand how they're so well trained and how we can get walk to canter or Spanish walk or levade, so rearing, or, you know, how we do shoulder in, how we teach it, how we teach quarters in or half pass, or, you know, any of those movements come from really solid, basic groundwork from the beginning. And then if we take a step back from groundwork, we have Mediterranean work, which is plugging into the energy and the movement of the horse in a stable, in a very, very feminine, relaxed kind of way. So I might shift my body a little bit like this with the hair, or move my hands a little, and the horse will move with me. So we are creating the initial want to be around me, and the initial dance that we will then replicate out in the arena or out in the paddock. So that's just a little introduction. Then once the horse is ready to meet other horses and we're sure they don't have a communicable disease or they don't have worms, then we will introduce single horses to that horse by way of having that single horse in the stable next to the horse that I've got in training. And then if they get along, then we might paddock them next to each other. If they continue to get along, and this is a really difficult part because it may not go to plan. The horse that you've chosen to go in with that horse may be too aggressive. It may be too passive. They may not get along, and that's okay, because there's always plan B, plan C, plan D. You know, you can change things around. Be aware when you change things around on a property, it takes time for everybody to settle. So I've put Dino in with Char, but initially it wasn't a match, and Dino just wanted to go back to his original paddock. Then he had a big argument with Thumper and got kicked. So then I reintroduced Char and Dino, and now they are best buddies. So just because it hasn't worked once, it doesn't mean that it's never going to work. Now, there are some aggressive over food horses that need to be paddocked alone, but next to other horses. And for me, Diesel is one of those. He is paddocked alone, and he prefers to be paddocked alone because he constantly herds other horses. He attacks other horses. He tries to protect me when there's food around. So it's not conducive to his health or other horses' health to have him in with other horses. But he's so calm when he's on his own, and he has horses on two sides of his paddock. So, you know, you have to work out what works for each horse and not just expect that what you think is going to happen is going to be the answer, because you will be disappointed. You will rack your brains of, what am I doing wrong? Why don't these horses get along? I think they will. They might not then, but they may. How can you create an environment where they can start to develop themselves as a herd? Sometimes I free lunge 2 horses at a time once they have sniffed each other's noses over the stable, they've shed water, they're getting along well. Then I'll bring them into the arena together and free lunge them. And most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it can be a really dangerous scenario. So you need to have the training to know what to do when things go wrong, because things will go wrong. It's the nature of life. Not everything is perfectly laid out and will go according to plan. You know, we don't just go on this trajectory when we're training. We go whoop, 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 whoop. And that's the nature of life. We don't just learn something then can naturally perfectly do it. And with some learning, there may be a level of anxiety for that learning, but I try and keep my learning, particularly for the horses, as stress-free as possible so they can actually learn and absorb the information that I'm giving them in the way that they learn, not in the way I expect humans to learn. So there's a lot to my job in knowing how humans learn and how humans teach, and knowing that humans are predators, and then working with horses who are prey animals and who are flight animals. They're so different to train and nourish than what humans are. So if you want to work with me, I'm only a phone call, an email, a message away. And, we can look at what your goals are with your horse, or if you're wanting to get back into horses, if you want online lessons, if you want to do my online mindset course, it's all on my website. Reach out, because I really want to be a mentor for whoever wants to understand and have this knowledge that I've gained over the last, probably 25 years. I've been studying horses, I've been working with horses, and it's my turn to give back to the industry, and I really want to see horse welfare bumped up the rungs a lot more, and a lot more knowledge out there in the general population. Don't just send your horse away to a trainer and expect it to come back if you haven't had training as well. So it's really important that you are learning along with your horse. So that's it for today, and I will see you next time we do a podcast, or I'll see you in my messages and emails.